Morris, America's finest cigarette, present
Racket, squad.
Do you inhale? Then you're better off smoking Philip Morris. Good evening and welcome. I'm Jay Jackson. Before we look at tonight's case, let's take a look at the calendar. Now, tonight is the 20th, and that leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more days to Christmas. 5 days to buy all the presents for all the good people on your list. May I make a suggestion? This year, say Merry Christmas with the holiday carton of Philip Morris. It's a gift that's always welcome because it's a gift of pleasure. Remember, when you give Philip Morris, you give America's finest cigarette. Won't you think of that tomorrow when you're out shopping? Thank you. Well, I'll see you later in the show, but right now, let's turn to tonight's case.
Captain Braddock, ready. What you're about to see is a thrilling, dramatic, real-life story taken from the official files of the police racket and bunco squads, business protective associations, and similar sources all over the country. It is presented by Philip Morris as a public service to expose the confidence game, the carefully worked-out frauds by which confidence men take more money each year from the American public than all the bank robbers and thugs with their violence. Because this case has some of the elements of the Old West, I call it the case of the condemned cattle. And it could happen to anyone. When Jim Daly put the coffee on this particular morning, he didn't know that this was to be a day he'd never forget. He was about to be a sucker. Jim was just an average fellow who had more than his share of troubles. His wife, Sue, had been seriously ill, and Jim's modest salary never seemed to be quite enough. There was the responsibility of his job, too. He handled the payroll for a large construction firm. It was the combination of these things that was to make this Saturday morning important to another man, Bart Carroll. Bart Carroll knew what was going to happen. He had already selected Jim Daly as his sucker. He had scouted Jim's job and his problems. He knew Jim would be home of a Saturday morning, so he conveniently had a flat tire in front of the Daly home. The whole carefully thought-out enterprise started just this simply.
Can't you eat any more, honey?
Not right now, Jim.
You gotta eat, you know. Get strong, do the housework. I'm getting dishpan hands.
Let me see.
See, I'm almost too weak to hold your hand.
Oh, you're teasing. Let me see.
Oh, I guess that's the mailman with $1 million.
Make it $2 million. We'll have some left over.
I'll settle for $2,000.
I hate to bother you, but I had a little trouble with my car. May I use your phone to call the garage?
Oh, motor trouble?
Flat tire. Is there a garage near here? I'm in quite a hurry.
There's no garage close. Your best bet's to change it yourself if you're in a hurry.
Oh, I'm afraid I don't have a jack.
You sure came to the right house. I'm the world's champion tire changer.
Oh, no. Now, if you'll just let me...
That's all right. I'll get my jack and give you a hand.
Well, you certainly helped me out of a bad situation. I'll make it right with you.
That's all right. I'll be back in a second, honey.
All right, darling.
Well, there you are, all ready to roll again.
Well, I don't know how you do it so fast. I know I couldn't. Now, if it had been a horse...
Oh, you own horses?
I operate a cattle ranch down below the border.
Oh.
Oh, by the way, my name is Bart Carroll.
I'm glad to know you. Jim Daly's my name.
I don't know how to thank you, Jim. Believe me, I won't forget this.
If I'm ever down your way, you can change a horseshoe for me.
I'll do that. But seriously, though, thanks again.
This was the first step. Bart had chosen his victim carefully. It wouldn't have mattered if Jim had changed the tire or not. Bart's foot was in the door, and the contact was made. The follow-up on this contact was made almost immediately. Jim Daly had another caller early that night.
Wait till you taste this culinary masterpiece I'm creating in the kitchen.
What are you fixing?
How will you have your spaghetti?
Any way you fix it.
I wish it was something more glamorous. Coming.
Mr. Daly?
Yeah? Oh, I was just fixing dinner.
Well, then I came at just the right time. This is for Mr. Carroll.
Mr. Carroll?
The man with the flat tire.
Oh, yeah.
He thought you might like a couple of steaks.
Steaks? Oh, I sure would. Why should he do this?
Well, for helping him out this morning. He sent along his card, too. It's right there on top.
Oh, gee, this is certainly nice of him, but he didn't have to go to this trouble and expense.
Well, it's sort of a coincidence, I guess. I just brought up a side of beef from Mexico today, and he thought he'd send me over here with a couple of steaks.
Oh, you work for him?
Yeah, I'm Jake, the foreman down at his ranch.
Oh, you mean these steaks came from his own cattle?
Yes, sir. That's the very finest beef in Mexico.
Oh, gee, this is certainly a wonderful surprise.
Mister, you can't buy beef like that.
You're so right. Oh, please give Mr. Carroll my thanks.
I sure will. Phone him if you want to. His phone number's on the card. Well, good night.
Good night. Thanks again. Honey, look at that. 2 of the juiciest steaks you ever saw.
And he gave you those just for helping him change his tire?
Yeah. There'll be no spaghetti tonight.
Didn't I hear the man say there was a card?
Oh, yeah. From Bart Carroll, Rancho Las Ceras. There's a Mexican address I can't pronounce. Well, there's a local phone number. Must be his home here.
You'll have to call him thank you.
First thing in the morning. Tonight, we'll have steak.
Aren't there some really wonderful people in this world, Jim?
You bet, honey. Too bad there aren't more like this Bart Carroll. Hello, Mr. Carroll. This is Jim Daly. That's right, the tire changer. I wanted to thank you for those steaks.
Well, glad you like them. They're from my own herd.
They're just what the doctor ordered. That's the first meal my wife's enjoyed since she's been ill.
Well, then I'm doubly glad. That partially returns the favor you did me yesterday.
Well, now I'm in your debt.
Let me know when you want some more.
I will when I can afford it. Right now, the financial structure of the Daily household is a little shaky.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Jim, how would you like a quarter of that beef?
Oh, I'd like it, Mr. Carroll, but I just can't afford it.
Now, don't worry about that. I'll have Jake deliver it to you next weekend. Yeah, you'll be hearing from me. Goodbye.
Bart kept his word, and the next Saturday, he and Jake appeared at Jim's home. Bart brought a quarter of beef all wrapped for the freeze locker. This was the beginning of the second step.
When we bought that freezer, I never thought I'd see it that full.
Was there room enough for all of it?
Oh, sure, plenty.
Good. Well, the next time I drop by, I expect to see Mrs. Daly out working in the garden.
Thank you.
Now, I don't know when I'll be able to pay you, Mr. Carroll.
Forget it, Jim.
Maybe you've forgotten we just carried a whole quarter of beef in there.
Well, it's Mexican beef, and we're in the United States.
What difference does that make?
Feed and labor costs in Mexico are practically nothing. Unfortunately, we've no market down there.
But you can sell them here in the States.
I wish we could.
Why not?
Mexico has had an epidemic of hoof and mouth disease. No cattle are allowed to cross the border.
Well, there's nothing wrong with your beef, is there?
I should say not. I wouldn't have given it to you.
How did you get the meat across the border, Mr. Carroll?
Well, Jake has some friends among the border guards. They let us bring over a little for ourselves and for our friends. So, since I really can't sell it, please accept this quarter of beef with my compliments.
Too bad you can't bring your whole herd up here.
Well, Jim, do you want me to turn smuggler?
Oh, I don't know, but something should be done.
I guess you could smuggle it out under the right circumstances if a man knew how to go about it.
We're not here to hatch plots, so if you'll excuse us, we'll leave.
Oh, I don't know when I can ever repay you, Mr. Carroll.
Well, I'll bring all my flat tires to you.
I'll fix them, too.
Good. We can find our way out. Goodbye.
Bye. Oh, gee, honey, it seems almost too good to be true, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Almost too good to be true.
Bart Carroll had now completed the preliminary steps. His victim was contacted and in debt to him. In the language of the racket, Jim was now planted. After several friendly social calls, Bart was ready for his next move.
Hello, Sue.
Hello.
I just dropped by to say goodbye. I'll miss you nice people.
You're going back to Mexico?
I'm going to try to save my ranch.
Save your ranch? What's happened?
I've just been notified that all my cattle are to be destroyed by the 1st of the month.
Mr. Carroll, that can't be true.
But it is.
But your steers don't have hoof and mouth disease.
In a condemned area, Even the healthy ones must go.
Isn't there any way of saving them?
Well, Jake has been trying to talk me into smuggling them over. It seems one of his border guard friends is willing to help us for a price.
Are you going to do it?
I said for a price. It amounts to paying a bribe. I don't have the cash. Every penny I own is invested in that ranch.
How much do you need?
$5,000. And for that amount, I could give half interest in the first load.
We don't even have 500.
We've had so many doctor bills.
I realize that. I'm sorry I shouldn't have mentioned it. It's just that I need help, desperately.
I wish we could help you, Mr. Carroll.
Well, if you should think of anyone who would like to double his investment in 48 hours, let me know.
Double their money? 48 hours?
That's right. In 48 hours. I have already arranged the sale of the cattle.
You mean you'd return $10,000 for $5,000?
Yes. And with my half, I could bring more steers across. Save part of my investment. It'd be worth it to me.
Gosh, we only had 5,000.
Well, I'm not leaving until tomorrow night, so if you should think of anyone who could help, let me know.
Yeah, I will. I'll try to think of someone, Mr. Carroll.
Thanks, Jim. Good night, Sue.
Good night. Good luck.
This was a golden opportunity for Jim. Here was a chance to return Bart's kindness. It was also a chance to make a tidy little profit. And Jim needed the money. Jim didn't have $5,000 of his own, but he handled far more than that in his job for the Stevens Construction Company. He handled several times that amount every week. This was the step Bart had planned. Jim had access to a large amount of money, and Bart needed the money for only 48 hours. Only 48 hours.
Hello, Mr. Carroll. Jim. I'd like to see you tonight if I could. No, this is confidential. Right, at your apartment at 8. Thanks. Oh, Mr. Carroll, I'll only take a couple of minutes.
That's all right, Jim. Sit down.
Oh, thanks.
Care for a drink?
No, thanks. Look, Mr. Carroll, you've been very good to me, and I know you're in a spot.
Oh, you're talking about my cattle.
Look, would you let me lend you the 5,000?
Well, that's very kind of you, Jim, but I know you can't afford it.
Well, I managed to borrow it.
Oh. Well, there's some little risk involved. It isn't exactly legal.
Yes, but your cattle are not diseased, and
I'm willing to split the profits with you 50-50.
I can use the money. I've got a lot of doctor bills. Here.
Well, thanks, Jim. This will help us both out of a hole. And Jake assures me his friend will still cooperate. Well, here's to us.
Look, Mr. Carroll, this won't take more than a couple of days, will it?
Oh, no. You'll have your money back day after tomorrow.
Good. That was one of the conditions on which I borrowed the money.
Well, this will be the quickest deal you've ever seen. Say, how would you like to drive down and see the cattle delivered?
You mean at the border?
Oh, nothing so dangerous. I have some property a few miles this side of the border. We'll meet the truck there and check the cattle.
Well, I don't like to leave Sue alone.
No, it'll only be for a few hours. Say, you know, you just bought yourself a half interest in a load of cattle. Don't you want to see them?
Yeah, I guess I do. Might be my last chance.
That's right.
Well, Bart's cattle were involved in a big operation. He made sure that their delivery would be in capable hands. And it wasn't long before the cattle were in the truck and speeding toward his hideout. We'll follow up tonight's story in just a moment, right after Jay Jackson sums up his case for Philip Morris.
Friends, to make your Christmas shopping easy and to make a sure hit with every smoker on your list, give Philip Morris America's finest cigarette. As you see, Philip Morris comes in a handsome gift carton especially decorated for the holiday season. But most important, it's the cigarette inside the carton that makes Philip Morris such a wonderful and such a welcome gift. For Philip Morris, in every way, is a truly distinguished cigarette. Proved definitely less irritating prove definitely milder than any other leading brand, Philip Morris is the perfect cigarette for every smoker. Yes, a gift of Philip Morris by the carton is a thoughtful gift. For it says, better than any words, I want you to have the best. Remember, when you give Philip Morris, you give America's finest cigarette. And now, back to tonight's story.
And now let's follow up the case of the condemned cattle.
Shouldn't he be here by now?
Oh, stop worrying, Jim.
Oh, he made it.
I told you we could depend on Jake.
Good work, Jake.
Easiest trip I ever made. You ought to get money like this every day.
You mean those are the things that give such fine steaks?
That's right.
They sure taste better than they look.
Well, they don't look like much at night, do they?
No.
Well, Jake, the biggest part of the job is done. How soon do you think you can deliver them?
Well, we ought to get the cattle in town by 5, and then...
Okay, boys, get your hands up. Take it easy. Nobody will get hurt.
Now, look here,
Shut up unless we talk to you. Now, who's the driver of this wreck?
I am.
What are you going to do?
Don't ask questions, nice boy. All right, Jack. Take the driver and shove off.
Oh, wait a minute. Take our wallets, but don't...
We've been following this truck all the way from the border. This is beef, mister. We're after the big dough. All right, you two, over against the shack and face it. Now, stay there. Don't move for 10 minutes. I might be around.
Oh, there goes our cattle.
Come on, let's follow them.
What good would it do if we caught them? With no guns, they'd kill us.
But I got $5,000 tied up in that truck.
A lot of good it'll do you dead. And don't forget, I lost 30 head of cattle.
Yeah, but we got to do something. At least try to find out where they went.
Okay, Jim, but it isn't much use. This is a thoroughly planned job. And a very, very slick operation. Come on.
Well, for once, Bart told the truth. This was a slick, well-planned operation. So slick that Jim never realized he was a sucker. And this was just the way that Bart wanted it. But Bart wasn't through yet, not by a long shot. He drove Jim around the countryside for a while. Of course, his search was useless. And by the time they returned to Bart's apartment, Jake was waiting for them.
But you must remember where you drove them.
I only drove a couple of miles down the highway, then they stopped, picked up another driver, and put a blindfold on me.
You've got to remember where you took those steers. I have to return that money.
Now, look, Daly, as soon as they unloaded those steers, they drove me back towards the city and let me go. That's all I can tell you.
What are we going to do, Mr. Carroll?
Nothing, I'm afraid.
Nothing.
Well, don't forget, Jim, what we were doing was hardly legal.
I know. But why can't we try to find them?
What would you do then? Steal them back?
They stole them from us.
That might take weeks. Don't forget, those steers are probably butchered by now. There are no brands on rib roast.
Look, Mr. Carroll, this is serious. I've got to put that money back.
Believe me, Jim, no one is more upset over this than I am.
I know, Mr. Carroll. I'm not blaming you.
Of course not. Hey, tell me, Jim, do you think your creditors will wait, say, another 3 days?
I don't know.
But I feel responsible. I'd like to make full repayment.
You want to give the money back?
That's right. But unfortunately, I don't have the cash.
But, Mr. Carroll, it's got to be cash.
Jim, suppose we brought another load of steers across the border and gave the entire profit to you.
Well, what about your investment? The money it cost you to raise those steers.
Well, I can't be responsible for throwing you into debt.
I wouldn't know how to repay you, Mr. Carroll.
Oh, that's all right, Jim. Now, I'll need another 5,000.
Oh, I won't be able to raise that much again.
Oh, sorry, but it's the only solution I can offer. Another 5,000 invested, and the profit is yours. All yours. Then you'll be able to return all you borrowed. And maybe have something left over.
Yeah, one load would repay everything. I'll have to think about it, Mr. Carroll. Mr. Stevens?
Yes?
I've stolen $5,000 from you.
Well,
Didn't you hear me? I said I've stolen $5,000 from you.
yes, I heard you, Jim. Don't you have anything more to say?
Well, yes, I do. Well,
Sit down, Jim. Now, tell me the whole story.
yes, sir. Well, you see, it all started when I changed a tire.
Jim Daly was fundamentally an honest man, and his conscience wouldn't allow him to borrow another $5,000.
So, you see, it wasn't until after the cattle were stolen that I really began to think. Till then, I tried to convince myself I'd only borrowed the money for a few hours, but I knew all the time I'd stolen it.
Well, go on.
Well, it was too late then, or I'd have returned it.
Yes, Jim, I believe you would have.
So I decided to come to you, Mr. Stevens, and give you a chance to get your money back.
Just how do I get it back, Jim?
Well, for another $5,000, Mr. Carroll will give you the entire profits from the second load. In 2 days' time, you'll have your whole $10,000 back.
Jim, it has taken 30 years to build this company. I've always had to work for my money.
But this is different. Mr. Carroll says that...
Yes, he can double the investment in 48 hours. If money came that easy, do you think I'd be fool enough to work this hard for it?
How can I pay you back? I can't get another job. No one will trust me.
Well, why shouldn't I continue to trust you?
How can you?
Oh, Jim, any or all of my employees may have stolen from me, but you're the only one that's ever told me about it. And that took courage. Yes, Jim, I still think that you're an honest man.
Well, what are you going to do?
Do? I'm going to call the police.
The police? Please, Mr. Stevens, isn't there something else?
Oh, don't worry, Jim. I'm not going to have you arrested. I just want a friend of mine to hear your story. Well, Captain, what's your opinion?
Well, it certainly has all the trimmings of a racket. But from Jim's description of Bart Carroll, I believe I know the man.
You mean he's done this to other people?
Yeah, probably. He was mixed up with black market meat during the war, but he must have found another use for his cattle.
Well, then why wasn't he arrested before this?
Too few people have your courage, Jim. They won't admit that they've been taken for suckers. But now that we have the story, we'll need evidence.
You mean my word isn't enough?
No, not quite. We'll have to tie in Carroll somehow or other with the hijackers. Otherwise, we won't be able to prove that he was even implicated.
Do you have any ideas on how we can proceed?
Yes, but it might take another $5,000.
Another 5,000.
But only for 48 hours. Perhaps we can get most of your money back.
All right. What's your plan?
Well, it'll take a little acting on Jim's part, but I think it'll work. Jim, you're to contact Bart Carroll again. Tell him that you got the $5,000 and you'll go through with the deal.
What time is he calling for you?
Any minute now. He phoned a little while ago.
Are you going to the same place?
Yeah, that phony ranch of his near the border. He assured me the hijackers wouldn't dare come back there again.
Jim, I'm worried.
I'll be perfectly safe, darling. Captain Braddock and his men will be near.
Bart Carroll is dangerous. Do you have to do this?
Darling, Mr. Stevens is giving me a bigger break than I deserve. It's the least I can do.
That's so much trouble, Jim. Please be careful.
I'll be all right, honey. It's Bart Carroll who better be careful. Oh, Jake's late.
Relax, Jim. You don't run these things on a timetable.
Yeah, I know. Say, you don't suppose those same fellows followed him again, do you?
Oh, I don't think they'd be that foolish.
No, of course not.
Say, that looks like the cattle rack now.
Yeah. Is that a car following him?
You seem awfully nervous, Jim.
Why not? I got a lot tied up in this.
Well, don't forget it's costing me, too.
Yeah, sure. I thought you might have been hijacked again.
Now, look, Daly, just because I was kidnapped by those...
Relax, Jake. Jim's only trying to tell you he's glad you're safe.
Yeah, that's right. I was worried about you.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh, you look tired. Why don't you take a cigarette before you drive on? Here.
Well, I was figuring on doing just that.
Well, there's your 10,000 practically in your pocket.
Who's that?
You remember how it's done, boys. Just repeat the act and we won't have any trouble.
All right, cowboy, up the rack. You and me's going for another ride.
Now, look here, we've had enough of this.
But we haven't, mister. We want all we can get. And this is real easy.
It's almost too easy.
Just what do you mean?
Even I can see through this.
Take it easy, Jim.
I'm tired of being made a sucker.
Careful, Jim, they might shoot.
No, they won't. They won't shoot me unless they shoot you first.
Look out. Don't shoot, Jack.
All right, get your hands up. Stand still and don't move. Nice going, Jim. That's all the evidence we needed to tie them all together.
Get up, Mr. Bart Carroll, and try to take me again.
Never mind, Jim. The law has a better way of taking care of men like these. Well, that's it. The so-called Mexican cattle had never seen the south side of the border. They were kept on a small ranch only a few miles from where they were hijacked. So far, we know of 17 people who fell for this condemned cattle racket. There are probably many more. Jim was very fortunate in having an employer like Mr. Stevens. He didn't lose his job, but he did learn a lesson he'll never forget. And Bart Carroll and his men will have plenty of time to think it over in the state pen. Now, Jim didn't know that his name topped the sucker list, but Bart Carroll did because he wrote the list. Is there a Bart Carroll somewhere with your name on his list? Be careful, because it could happen to you. In a moment, we'll call for a few scenes from next week's case. Right now, here's a call for America's finest cigarette.
Call for Philip Morris.
Do you inhale? Then you're better off smoking Philip Morris. The one cigarette proved definitely less irritating, proved definitely milder than any other leading brand. Philip Morris, America's finest cigarette.
Next week, you'll see Terry Turner, who was a sucker for a knockout. Would you be?
Hold on, Johnny. Hold on. What's the matter with that dumb kid?
Well, no E-flat dame for you, Mr. Turner. Slender, tender, and tall.
Once you've tacked yourself onto this, Mark, don't let yourself get bored with him, no matter what kind of a square he turns out to be. Just remember that you're playing him for the 50 grand touch.
That's manslaughter. Yeah, I'm getting out of here. You can do what you want. I had no part of this.
See Racket Squad next week, same time, same station.
Tune in every Monday night when Philip Morris presents the Lucille Ball Desi Arnaz show, I Love Lucy, over most of these same stations. For delayed broadcasts, consult your newspaper for day and time.